Greetings, cinephiles. Are you looking for a movie analysis podcast that stands above the rest? Then look no further than Collateral Cinema, the only movie podcast that matters.
We analyze good movies, we analyze bad movies, and yes, we also analyze the in-betweens of the world of cinema.
So if you like what you hear, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
And yes, my friends, we are 420 friendly. So when you listen to us, smoke it if you've got it. And now, here's a new episode of Collateral Gaming. The show starts right now.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Gio.
This is Collateral Gaming.
Welcome back to Collateral Gaming, everybody. The only video game podcast that matters, where we focus on good games, bad games, and everything in between in the world of gaming. It has been a while since I have been here with you, Ash, but we are back for part 2 of our journey through Fire Emblem, The Blazing Blade. How have you been, buddy?
Yes, sir. We're doing great, guys. We are podcasting across the country, and yes, we are a 420 friendly podcast. I am doing great, buddy. Life is awesome because we're finally doing the second half of this episode, finishing off Season 4 of Collateral Gaming and getting to talk about a phenomenal game even more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sorry about the delay on this part, everybody. I had moved, and I started a new job, and there's just been a lot of planning going on, so I'm sorry for the delay. That's on me, but it's good to be back, and I'm excited to sit here and talk about, honestly, one of my favorite Game Boy games, let alone Fire Emblem games, with Ash, because honestly, it's been a long time coming, especially the second part. It feels like it's taken forever, and I'm sorry about that, but it's good to be back.
It's life, man. I get it. You know, every time that we were gonna record and we had set a date, you know, something would happen. You'd be like, this came up, or like there was a couple times where like I just fucking woke up late. And I was like, damn it.
Yeah, it's totally fine. It's a matter of getting that schedule on track, and honestly, it's a bit of a doozy sometimes, but you know what? It's fine because we can make it work.
You gotta.
I'm pumped for today. But before anything else, we got some potential news coming through. There are rumors, Ash, of an impending Nintendo Direct, which is really exciting because we haven't really gotten anything from Nintendo this year.
Yeah, that's true. I actually hadn't heard about that, but
it's only rumors. That's it.
No. You're right. I did hear rumors about that. I'd love to see a Nintendo Direct. And seeing as it's been a while since we did part 1, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because, no, I don't know. I just woke up, dude.
I think we, honestly, me too. I just finished my cup of coffee, but honestly, we need a Nintendo Direct. There's been almost no news, and a lot of people say no news is good news, but that's not true. You know, it's one thing to kind of keep suspicion alive, but at the same time, it's not fair to kind of just let us sit in agony. We don't know anything really about Breath of the Wild 2, except that it's supposedly coming out in March of 2023, or early 2023. March is my guess, because you know that's when Breath of the Wild 1 came out, March 2017. Mm-hmm. We still have nothing as far as Metroid Prime 4 is concerned, and it's frustrating. You know, I want to hear more about these titles that we deserve. I mean, to be honest, I thought we would even see a new Mario game at this point. It's been what, 3 or 4 years since Odyssey?
It's been a little while. And yeah, I'd love to see an Odyssey 2, because on the Wii we did get a Galaxy 2, and Odyssey was, pretty much just as, if not more popular, than Odyssey was. I'm pretty sure it outsold it. So yeah. Odyssey over Galaxy, I should say. I'd love to see a new Fire Emblem game, Fire Emblem 17, or very possibly, probably before we see that, we'll get an announced remake, because let's see, they did a Fire Emblem 3 remake, although that only came out in Japan. Boo.
Yeah, that's stupid.
I think a Fire Emblem 4+5 remake, combining Genealogy of the Holy Wars plus Thracia 776, would probably be the best thing to do. And then, after that, I think the very next thing they should do is do a remake of Binding Blade and Blazing Blade.
Yep, I think so. I hope that they kind of keep, if they do remake Binding Blade and Blazing Blade, I hope they keep them in that kind of GBA style. Kind of like they did with Superstar Saga. Keep the same like layout. I just don't want them to go to the way they did Three Hopes or Path of Radiance. I really don't enjoy those Fire Emblem games, and I'm sorry. I know that I'm probably committing treason and blas.
Well, Three Hopes is a Warriors game. I think you meant Three Houses.
Oh, not Three Hopes. Yeah, Three Houses. Sorry. Yeah.
But I understand what you mean. Yeah, no. I don't know. Three Houses. It does feel quite a bit like Fire Emblem. It doesn't really feel any different to me, other than, you know, like for you, you know, that we don't have the same. I mean, there's voices and shit, and I know for like the classic experience, a lot of people don't like that. If they were gonna make a remake of the GBA games, I think they should add an option to turn the voices off. But they actually ended up working out the animations. I mean, somewhere when Fire Emblem went into 3D. I guess we'll kind of get into our discussion here, because there was something special about the 2D Fire Emblem games that lost when we made the transition to 3D, which originally was that the critical animations weren't nearly as satisfying. That changed when Echo Shadow of Valentia and Three Houses came out. They actually managed to make the critical animations and just the overall fighting animations a lot cooler, and kind of, you know, regained some of that the caliber of those. But one thing that the Fire Emblem GBA games have, you know, are have a lot of notoriety for are these awesome crit animations. I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can just watch a compilation of crit animations.
Well, cool. I mean, that was always one of my favorite parts about the Fire Emblem experience, is watching the different characters and their critical hits. But that's one thing I didn't like about the DS versions, was the criticals. I didn't like how it kind of like showed a panel with the face of a character and then they would say something and then they would do a critical hit. I never liked that. I never appreciated that. I thought that was very cheesy. I loved the way the GBA games did it, to where they would just kind of do a special move and then they would do a critical hit. So yeah. I don't know. It never really sat right with me. But if they fixed it and made it, you know, better, I definitely wouldn't knock it. You know, it's Fire Emblem. So
we'll talk about that more in a bit. But I think that they could easily modernize the Blazing Blade and the Binding Blade experience, and you know, like I said, just package those two together, because they're story linked, allow you to do either one first and then finish the other. And I kind of even had this idea, actually, we'll talk about that later. For right now, actually, I kind of wanted to get into the story of the Blazing Blade, something that we didn't get into last time.
Yeah.
And particularly some of the characters. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think that the story is probably one of the most well-refined of the Fire Emblem series. I really like the relationship between the main characters. You've got Lynn, Sacy. Is it Sacy? A girl from Sacy. What's the name of it?
I always pronounced it Sakai, but I don't know.
Saucy. We'll call it Saucy. We'll call it Saucy. She's a girl from the Saucy Plains. Eliwood, a prince of...
So in Japanese, it is actually pronounced Saka.
Saka.
So
that's dope.
That gives you a clue. It's not always, direct, but usually the Japanese pronunciation is meant to imitate the pronunciation.
Okay. Well, I love the main characters, Lynn, Eliwood, and Hector. I think that their stories are incredible. I love the length of the game, 30 chapters plus many, side chapters, I guess X, or what would you call those chapters?
Yeah, those are called guidance chapters, or they'll be like denoted by number X. And, those are those little side chapters. They're always worth doing, in my opinion. The game will tell you, think about it. These chapters are a little bit hard. And they give you the choice to, not do them. But you're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't do them. Because, first of all, you get access to, some better weapons and stuff that you wouldn't normally get in the playthrough without it. And you also get a little bit more story, which is really nice. Because you can breeze through this game pretty quickly.
You really can, and I mean, even towards the latter half of the game, it gets really, really hard.
Yeah.
But if you're well seasoned in, Fire Emblem and how the game works, you'll be all right.
There are only so many chapters in this game, and so you can actually say that experience is a precious resource, and that's something you actually have to manage. You know, you have to make sure that, you know, you're not just killing all of your units with all of the enemies with your good units, but giving some of your weaker units that precious experience that you only have so much of.
Wear down enemy units with stronger units, and then use the weaker units to finish them off, giving them the max. Yeah, giving them that max experience.
Right. That's the way to do it. But you got to make sure you're not just finishing off because, you know, an inexperienced player would be tempted to just send Marcus through and solo everybody.
Ew. I hate Marcus.
Oh, no. Marcus is god tier, man. Marcus will carry you through the game, especially in the beginning, until you end up promoting one of your own paladins.
Oh, you got Kent and Sane, man. Those guys are awesome. And
yeah, I mean, once you promote one of them, they're better. But I'm just saying, until you get to that point, Marcus will carry you.
Oh, yeah. You're
but
right.
Don't promote Lowen. He sucks.
And he also has no eyes.
Yeah.
Green puffy hair with no eyes. But I really like the way the game starts. You're basically just kind of jumping into like the beginning of the story. You're basically a tactician. You yourself. This is actually, I think this is the only game where you kind of put yourself in the game as not necessarily a playable character, but your whole objective is to, you know, guide the team to safety. Mm-hmm. And basically, since you, the player, are strategizing to keep, you know, your units safe, they kind of give you a role in the game, and so you're acknowledged throughout the entire game instead of you just... It's more immersive. It makes you feel like you're in the game. And so you basically meet Lynn at the very beginning of the game, and she realizes that she has to go and save, or she wants to go and see her grandfather. And so you start traveling with her, and basically the whole But basically the whole first, like, 10 to 12 chapters of the game is a glorified tutorial.
Yes.
And I never really enjoyed that, but it does give you solid footing for the rest of the game. It kind of helps you embrace, because this was the first Fire Emblem that was released in America as well. And so they kind of, they I guess Nintendo thought that all American children and people were stupid. So they just kind of, they kind of spoon-fed us how the game worked, and it really helped because the game does get hard, but it's interesting the way they set that up.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I think that's why that makes this game one of the best Fire Emblem games to start off with. And I'm glad that I did, because it does give you a big tutorial on how to use, you know, all of the different characters. Compare that with the immediate preceding game, The Binding Blade, which in all other ways looks almost like the same game. I mean, it's got the same assets and everything. And, you know, that game just kind of throws you into the action.
Yep.
This one actually, you know, like I said, because it was the first Fire Emblem game in the West, they actually kind of needed to have a tutorial for Western players. I mean, not that the very first Fire Emblem game ever had a tutorial of any kind, but we're in modern times now where, you know, we're a little bit more sensible, and maybe the Japanese are just a little bit patronizing to us and think that we needed it. But you know what? They're right, because I would not have known what I was doing. I don't think I've really ever played a strategy RPG before this game. I think this was the first tactical RPG I think I actually played. Now I've gone back and I started playing like Final Fantasy Tactics and some other stuff, but this one is it's a good intro into that genre.
It's definitely an interesting experience. The turn-based gameplay is something to get used to, especially if you make a mistake and you kind of watch the enemy units.
Yeah,
you know, make you pay, kind of punish you for your mistakes. So it's an experience, but it's a good one.
Yeah, and for those first 10 chapters, you know, it is basically a glorified tutorial, but there is a story going on. You're getting introduced to Lynn's character, and Lynn is on a mission basically to reunite with her grandfather, like you said. I mean, that's it. That's what she's trying to do. She's meeting characters along the way, and although you can skip Lynn's tale in subsequent playthroughs, it's actually worth it to play through it every time, because
experience,
those units will carry over the experience that they gained in Lynn's tale.
Absolutely, they will. And honestly, it's worth it because Lynn is one of my favorite characters in the game, so it's good to have her fully leveled up, especially towards the end. And we'll talk about the end here in a little bit. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but Lynn is one of the most powerful characters in the game. If you you continuously raise all of her stats. And honestly, you meet some really, really awesome characters in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, no, that's whenever you meet your that's whenever you meet Will, Dorcas.
Oh God, Dorcas.
And I'm just thinking of that dumb commercial that I'm actually going to play as the clip.
I hate Dorcas. I mean, you meet him in one of my least favorite chapters of the game. You have to defend him and you have to defend his wife. And not defend his wife, but you have to you do defend his wife, don't you? She's in the center, right?
Yeah, you defend his wife. It's the first defense type chapter. It's also the chapter that introduces you to the concept of recruiting units. And so you actually recruit Dorcas. And and he's like, wait, what am I doing? I don't want to kill my wife. It kind of makes me wonder, like, if you don't recruit him, what happens?
If he kills his own wife, I don't know, but that'd be hilarious. It'd be tragic, but it also just wouldn't make sense.
No, there's probably a whole ass like scene with it too, where he's like,
game
what
over.
have I done?
He's like, oh crap, my axe wasn't supposed to go there. I really don't like Dorcas at all. I think I've leveled him up all the way before, and he's just not one of the stronger units, even as a warrior.
Well, there's only two of them. You have him or Barter, but and they're both trash units. But at least Barter actually in Hector's mode has there's a reason to promote him into a warrior. Promoting him to a level 5 warrior actually grants you access. It allows you to recruit a character, I believe.
Yeah, there's a catch to it. That's another thing I like about this game is that recruiting and leveling up certain characters gives you access to more of the game. And I've always thought that was really cool, even though, sometimes it's really hard to get it done and you have to restart chapters a lot.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, in Lynn's playthrough, you also get Lucius for the first time, and he's one of my favorite characters. I mean, like I said, I love all the mage characters, and out of the 2 light mages that you can get in the game, he's the only one that's actually worth anything. Sorry, Renault, you came in the game so late.
Oh,
I have no
trash.
idea. I have no idea if he's trash or not. You get a chapter and a half to actually use him. And it's like, what is the fucking point? I love his ending too, is basically like, yeah, he came in and then he fucked off and nobody ever knew what the deal was with him.
He's a worthless bishop. Well, he's just there to kind of aid you a little bit if you're a shitty player and you've managed to get by the skin of your teeth. Because honestly, the last 5 chapters really test your ability, or really test you on whether or not you've taken a lot of time prepared, because you have to manage your funds well, you have to level up your characters, you have to make sure all of them, I try to make it to where every single one of my characters can survive on their own if need be, and so together they're basically unstoppable. And the last 5 chapters, especially, there's I think it's chapter 27, it's called Cog of Destiny. It's where you fight Lloyd. He's a Sword Master.
Yeah, it's whoever you didn't face before. So if you face Linus, you get Lloyd. If you faced Lloyd, you get Linus. And I think that depends on the... I might be wrong, because I know there's another chapter that also does this, but I think that depends on... No, I think that's the overall strength of your units. Yeah, that's what that one does. There's another unit that depends on the overall strength of your magic units versus your physical units, and that's going to determine what kind of enemies you're going to face. But I think the Lloyd versus Linus one is just your overall team strength, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I've never actually faced Linus there. I've only ever fought Lloyd, the sword.
Really?
Master. Yeah, I've never fought.
Well, considering the fact that you overlevel your units, that probably means that you're facing the stronger one.
Yeah, the more difficult one. Dude, it's so much fun. That game is so good. But that chapter, Cog of Destiny, is a nightmare. There's got to be at least 200 enemies that come through over the course of the chapter.
That one is difficult, but it will test you. But you also get access to a Wyvern Lord, which is funny because it's not even that long after you got the Wyvern Knight. What's her name? Valka is the Lord character that you face in that chapter, so you can recruit her. Also, I think there's a town over past a mountain ridge, but there's a ballista and there's a bunch of archer characters right there. So it's like there's a town that there's a mountain you could easily fly over with a Pegasus unit, but there's a bunch of archers standing in your way. Sure wish you had picked up that Delphi shield.
Delphi shields.
Which I did.
Protect your flying units.
Yeah, exactly. Who else do you pick up in Lynn's tale? Your original Pegasus unit, Florina.
Yeah.
You pick up Sarah, who is honestly the inferior healing unit compared to Priscilla, because Priscilla's on a horse. So whatever.
Yeah, but her Sarah and Erk's support conversation is really, really nice. That's another thing about the game is the support conversation. You can support conversations for those of you listening who haven't played a Fire Emblem game. Support conversations are basically ways for you to connect units together. If you get the opportunity to, when you move a unit next to another unit, and it gives you the option for support, it basically allows that unit to have a conversation with the other unit. And if you do that 3 times, it fully levels up their relationship. And so basically you can have characters fall in love and get married. You can have characters go from being enemies to best friends. You can have people. Yeah, basically it's just a way for your characters in your game to get closer with each other. And it's honestly really cool that they did that because it adds value to the characters. It adds more story beyond what was already there. Like, for example, in Sacred Stones, there's a cleric named Natasha that you get in, I think you meet her in Chapter 5. And you also meet a swordmaster in that chapter named Joshua. Throughout the game, you can have those two talk to each other. They'll fall in love and get married and have a kid. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's
so
really cool.
Not every character has a support conversation with every other character. It's kind of
Yeah.
a mystery figuring out who has what. But I think after you play through the game once, you actually get, or partway through the game, you actually get a list of what characters that character is compatible with, and so you can figure it out. But a lot of it is, just kind of common sense, knowing, okay, these characters are siblings, or okay, these characters come from this background, or these characters are already married.
Yep.
But some of it's like, apparently there's a conversation between like Oswin and Dorcas, and it basically consists. I think we might have talked about this last time, but it basically just consists of Oswin trying to recruit Dorcas, and Dorcas being like, "Nah, man, I got a wife."
Nah, man, I'm married. Fuck off.
and Oswin's just basically like, understood. So yeah, no, I think, and we talked about this last time for sure, the support conversations, but I want to emphasize that the support conversations are where you get a lot more story. You're going to actually hear about these characters' backgrounds, and it's going to influence their outcome, because at the end of the game, that character either fucks off on their own or they fuck off with somebody else.
Yeah.
And that is Fire Emblem for you, and you have to be careful because your support conversations are limited to 5 per character. Meaning that if you level 2 characters up to A, those 2 characters can't make an A rank conversation with anybody else. They can only ever get up to a B, or they can have 2 C rank conversations with 2 other people. So it kind of gives you, and we did talk about this before, but it gives you an element of being able to do each playthrough a little bit differently. I mean, for me, all of my lords had support conversations with each other. Eliwood and Hector easily got that A rank. And then both Eliwood and Hector had conversations with Lynn as well. I think up to B, if I'm not mistaken.
Don't Lynn and Eliwood fall in love?
I think that's a path that can happen. Lynn and So basically, it's really funny. Roy's mother can be determined by your Fire Emblem 7 playthrough, but whoever you pick ends up dying by the time Fire Emblem 6 comes around. So, if you want Lynn to live, don't.
I mean, I don't give a shit about that. Once the game's over, I don't really give a shit. Lynn can die.
But Eliwood can also have a romance with Ninian, which is really interesting because that means that Roy is like part dragon or some shit. Or you can have one with Florina, I believe.
I don't like that. That bothers me.
Or it might be Fiora. What's one of the Pegasus Knights?
Yeah, I feel like it would be Fiora because I feel like Florina's really young.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's actually Fiora. But yeah, I think it's her. But I think Florina can actually marry Hector.
Okay.
And be the mother of their child. So, because I know one of them is one of them and one of them is the other. But Florina also has a support conversation with Lynn. Is there an actual like same-sex relation in any of the Fire Emblem support conversations in any of the games?
I don't think so.
Well, Three Houses, you can have a same-sex relationship between your avatar character.
Oh,
I know that much.
Yeah, I mean,
Byleth,
that's cool.
Byleth can be gay. Actually, this is the very first Fire Emblem game. You talked about this earlier. This is the very first Fire Emblem game to have an avatar character. That was something that I guess they felt the series needed, or the West would connect a little bit more. But like you said, I think it does actually immerse you in the world and the story a little bit more, because you get to have this character who by default is named Mark, but you can decide their name, gender, and their birthday, which will actually determine. It has an effect on supports later on.
Okay.
I believe, like, whatever birthday they have is their affinity, and so the units that have that affinity, I don't know the details of it, but
Well, I mean, I think it's really cool that Nintendo included that to kind of keep up with the times and to give support where it's needed.
The drums of war are beating. No man can be trusted. What happened to Dorcas? I put poison in his mutton.
Build an army. Trust nobody. Fire Emblem. Only on Game Boy Advance. Rated everyone. Game Boy.
Yeah, so your avatar character never actually talks, and you never actually see their face, and they're only minimally involved in the story, but they're always there, traveling with the troop.
Oh, well, cool.
Yeah, so, you kind of get this sense of adventure, of you kind of just being a part of these events that are happening. Now, after Lynn's story, then you can start Eliwood's story if you're playing for the first time, or you can do Hector's story, which is the same thing as Eliwood's story, but from Hector's perspective and a few extra chapters, and it's a little bit harder.
Yeah, I like Eliwood's story, to be honest. I was never a big fan of Eliwood's path, or not Eliwood, sorry, Hector's path.
Hector's path.
I don't like Hector that much. I think he's arrogant, pompous, and a bit of a jackass. Well, I guess that's part of what makes his character so charming.
Too bad he's the best. He's the best Lord then in terms of gameplay, guys.
Oh, he is very powerful. His defense is off the charts. I've never been... Okay, so I guess we can talk more about gameplay, but the weapon triangle... Out of the weapon triangle, I think axes are my least favorite. They're very
slow.
powerful. They're very slow. But I love sword-wielding characters, and that's another reason why Eliwood and Lyn are kind of at the top of my list.
Yeah, well, and see, Eliwood and Lyn don't end up being very, very strong units, but if you level them up and invest in them, they'll keep up with the rest of your team. The nice thing about Lyn is that she at least dodges like hell, which is really, really nice, and she can get those crit animations a little bit more. Her speed and her luck stats are actually much higher than all the other characters, which is her saving grace. Eliwood is kind of a weak unit, at least until he gets his promotion, and then he gets more mobile. He gets the horseback.
Yeah, but his piercing ability is really nice. I feel like he does slightly more damage when he uses like specialized swords, like rapiers or rapier. What do you want to call those?
I always said rapiers, but I don't know. Maybe it's rapier.
Rapier.
Because it sounds
like
French.
A French dish. But yeah, I feel like he's more vicious with those because they just have a piercing effect, especially against like knighted units.
Yeah, and whenever he gets the Durandal, I mean, he is unstoppable.
Yeah, especially those. I hate that you can't use those weapons until the very end, though.
I hate that he doesn't even have a legendary weapon of his own until the very end.
Yep.
His weapon that he comes with is the rapier. And that's it. Like, you could equip that on other units, and you don't even really want to use that unless you're fighting horseback or mounted units.
Absolutely.
So, you kind of just give him a steel sword and...
Well, also, the little... knights. The little knights.
Yeah.
Well, you said knighted units. I'm dumb. Sorry.
Armored units and horseback units. I think the armored units are called knights, right?
Yeah, they are. And they become generals.
Right.
I love Lyn's story, though. Lyn's story from the very beginning will always be my favorite because not only... She kind of has like a Master Sword moment from Zelda. Like the manicotti, I guess that's what... It sounds like a type of Italian dish. But the manicotti... the sword literally chooses her. It's really cool. And the Soul Cotti is one of the most badass weapons in all of Fire Emblem, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, the Manicotti and the Soul Cotti. I think the mana of Manicotti means moon. The Soul Cotti means sun. So,
moon cheese.
Moon cheese. Yeah, the part where Lin gets the manicotti is cool, until you find out that it has durability like any other weapon. But it's okay if it breaks during Lin's playthrough. You still get to play it in Eliwood or Hector's tail.
Yep.
It comes back fully restored. But if you break it, then it's gone for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I'll use the manicotti until it's got about 10 durability left, and I'll try to be very sparing with that.
Well, one thing that I didn't realize either was that like the rapier, the Lord weapons are strong against specific types. I think it's the same. I think they're strong against horseback and armored units, if I'm not mistaken, or one or the other. But which I didn't know. The game doesn't tell you. The game actually flat out lies about what Hector's weapon is strong against. It's like it's strong against infantry, and it's not. It's strong against cavalry.
It's literally not. Strong against... Dude, I hate those little soldier guys. Since we're talking about infantry, the little soldier type characters.
Oh, yeah, no. For most Fire Emblem games, that's not even a playable class.
The little frontline grunt.
Yeah, no, they're just like on foot spear units. So weak. Like, if you're going to have a spear character, at least put them on horseback. And that's what most Fire Emblem games did. But a lot of games have it to where... not a lot of games, but some games have you start as a soldier, and then you get the cavalry promotion. And so your characters don't start as cavaliers, they start as soldiers. Echoes does that, Three Houses does that.
Yeah. Also, well, no, that's not that doesn't... That we don't have to talk about that, because that doesn't actually show up until Sacred Stones.
Yeah.
But the units that start, like the trainee units, like Ross and Amelia, those type of weak units, those don't show up in Blazing Blade.
No, and that was actually kind of cool.
Out.
I actually like that. That's something that we'll definitely talk about if we do the games that feature those.
Absolutely, we should.
Blade actually set the foundation for the Sacred Stones in a lot of ways, and you could say that Blazing Blade walked so Sacred Stones could run.
Yep. Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, I enjoy Blazing Blade more than Sacred Stones. Sacred Stones really just added a lot of variety when it comes to Fire Emblem, because Sacred Stones is the first game where you could actually choose which class you could, promote to, yeah.
Yeah, it has the branch promotion system. Well, the cool thing about Blazing Blade is it actually set a lot of precedents for the Fire Emblem series as a whole. One thing that's interesting about Blazing Blade, as opposed to every other Fire Emblem game that had ever been developed before, is that it actually recycled assets from the previous game. No other Fire Emblem game had done that before. Every Fire Emblem game up to that point started from scratch. What's nice about the fact that Blazing Blade did that is that Intelligent Systems took the time to develop the other parts of the game better and just make it an overall better game and flesh out some of the components that would shape the franchise, literally. I mean, this game is single-handedly responsible for Fire Emblem continuing to be a success today.
Yeah, I think Intelligent Systems did a really good job of kind of setting the bar for, how improvements of video games should be done. Take things from previous games and use that to improve upon the next title. I feel like a lot of titles and stuff nowadays focus too much on the money instead of, the actual improvement.
Right, exactly. And, take games like Cyberpunk.
Oh, God.
Which, no, it's not the developer's fault. Publishers really, really push that deadline on them. But it just goes to show that if you don't have the time to develop your systems, the game's not going to be very good. If the Intelligent Systems had taken the time that they put into the Blazing Blade to really hammer out the gameplay and refine it, then the Binding Blade would have been a lot more successful. But then we would have never gotten the Blazing Blade. So
yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I like what they did with the story of the Blazing Blade, because it's essentially the prequel to the game that came before it.
Right.
And it's what we needed. I wanted to learn that story.
Yeah, it's like, did you want to play as Roy's father? Well, now you get to.
Well, honestly, that and, the Sealed Sword, I hate that story. It's got such a terrible ending, because if you don't do everything just right and get all of the weapons, you don't get to access the actual last chapter, which sucks.
I thought it was interesting how the Blazing Blade sets up the story. The villain of the Binding Blade, you actually encounter him as a child, and you save him. You're the reason you made this happen.
Yeah.
The story of the Blazing Blade is for lack of a better term, it's fairly by the numbers. It's nothing that's like
it's a tad lackluster.
But the storytelling, the character, the interactions between the characters and how you get from point A to point B is actually really interesting. And I like what they did with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, basically your basic premise of the story that you get whenever you get partway through Eliwood and Hector's tale is that, you've got this evil man Nurgle who wants to bring the dragons back and absorb the quintessence of dragons and take over the world or something. I don't know. I don't even know actually why he wants to do what he does, but he does. He wants to do it.
He just wants power. He was friends with Athos for so long, and they were working on ancient ways of magic, and it just kind of consumed him. And it's really sad because it's a classic story, but it's told very well. A classic story of somebody who discovers power and they become consumed and obsessed with it. And it's done really well and it's very sad, because that Athos and his name's Athos, right? The Archsage, Athos and Nurgle are really good friends, carrying over a race of ancient dragons.
Yeah, and
in the desert.
I think there's a backstory with Nurgle that you can unlock that isn't in it, like through support conversations or something, or some of the extra chapters that you get in Hector Hard Mode, but. Yeah, he actually has a motivation. I think like his wife or someone died, but like eventually he just started seeking power and he forgot the original reason why he sought power and just started seeking power for the sake of it.
Yep, he just wanted to become stronger.
Also, I think I heard that Nils and Ninian are actually his children.
Maybe? I don't know. That doesn't seem right.
Well, I watched a video and it's actually it was a YouTube.
We can confirm it.
Yeah,
look it up.
I'm gonna look it up right now and find out. But yeah, somebody told me relatives. Yeah, Nurgle is Nils and Ninian's father, but I guess you wouldn't normally know that unless you
are lore obsessive.
Play through the game a certain way. So yeah, Nils and Ninian are actually his children. That makes it a lot more interesting, doesn't it?
It does.
I don't think he's aware of that because he sends Ninian to her death. And that's actually one of the most heartbreaking points in the story because Ninian is kind of the de facto romance for Eliwood. It seems like she's kind of the one that he's intended to fall in love with. I mean, It's ultimately up to player choice, but...
I mean, it sets it up to where Eliwood, slays her on accident. That part's really sad.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah, because they set them up as basically this budding romance. The story even teases it at various points. And then he slays her and not even of his own will. Apparently the Durandal's like, oh shit, a dragon.
Yep, basically the sword takes over Eliwood and he has no choice.
Yeah, and then he kills Ninian as a dragon. And then you find out, but it's okay. She gets resurrected in the end. And if you manage to get her support conversations with Eliwood, instead of returning to the world of dragons with her brother, she actually stays with Eliwood and they marry and they have little baby Roy, who is apparently part dragon.
Little baby Roy. Yeah, Roy. I like Roy, but not as much as Eliwood. I think Roy is... He can be very strong. Also, they did just a little sidetrack. Somebody made something called Project Ember for Fire Emblem 6, and they remade it to where Roy can actually level up to be a mounted unit.
Oh, that would be nice. Yeah, I was gonna say if they do a remake, that's something I'd probably implement is fix the promotion in Fire Emblem 6, bring in some of the promotions from 7 into 6, and make Roy a mounted unit. That would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, actually, my idea was, if they do a Fire Emblem 6/Fire Emblem 7 remake, I would add another tier of promotions for all the Lord characters, and introduce kind of a branch promotion system similar to the Sacred Stones.
I mean, that sounds awesome, but I think if they did that, they would need to implement some more chapters, add to the story a little bit, which, I wouldn't mind. I always want more story.
You would have to actually implement. You would actually have to do that because there's no other way that if you're going to flesh out these two games and make them bigger, I think an additional set of chapters is necessary. And maybe you'd get some time to actually spend with Renault, say, in game, and have a few chapters.
I hate him. He doesn't deserve to be in the game.
Just remove him. That's what we're doing in the remake. We are removing Renault. Removed Renault. Nobody cared about that, actually. Everybody was just like, okay.
Oh, Renault.
But
What a waste of a character. You'd think it would be exciting to get a bishop late game, but nope.
well, it's like you already have one by that point. You're so late in the game, you've already promoted Lucius probably by that point. So it's like,
And Lucius is a badass, so getting Renault it's just disappointing.
and if not Lucius, maybe Sarah. Although why you'd end up promoting her over Lucius is kind of beyond me.
The last time I played through the game, I promoted Sarah and Lucius. I promoted everybody because I found the secret shop. You can find. Oh, the secret shop is awesome, and of course, I love to arena spam. So at that point, I had like 400,000 gold.
Yeah, and if you send characters in with Nice's Grace, they can't actually die.
Yeah.
And you get to send them in twice. It's a glitch.
Yep.
You have to. I think the way it works is you send them. You apply Nice's Grace, you send them in, and then as soon as they come out, you pick them up. I think with another character, you rescue them and then drop them off, and then you can send them back through or something like that.
All right. Well, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I never knew this, but can you actually promote Ninian, or does she stay the same all game?
Not that I'm aware of. I never promoted her.
Because that's why I never really took the time to use her that much. I've never really used Ninian that much. I don't really like characters that constantly are just there to renew your turn.
Ninian and Nils, well, I don't know. That's really useful. I ended up adding them to my party more often than not because the advantage of having that extra turn every time really helps. Especially, like, you can use it on a healer character and heal 2 units at once, or, you can have a character go over here to this village and do this and then come back and fight an enemy, or, I ended up finding a lot of uses out of that. Also, the Nice's Grace ability, not only for arena spamming, but I just found it useful overall to give characters, full damage resistance.
Yeah.
Because they're basically immune to everything after you put Nice's Grace on them. They take
absolutely.
hardly any damage from both physical and magical attacks, which is nice. If you're trying to protect a character, that's the way to do it.
Yep. Kind of piggybacking more on the story of Ninian, I like how, even though Eliwood does take her out, I like how they bring her back. It kind of revives that happiness, because you are rooting for Ninian and not Ninian and Nils, that's incest, but Ninian and Eliwood. Ninian and Eliwood, you are kind of rooting for them, and when she gets taken out by Eliwood, it's a really heartbreaking moment.
Yeah.
But she comes back in the final chapter. She's revived, and there's some hope.
It's nice. It's not nearly as tragic as it's made out to be. The game really throws you for a loop there, and then just kind of brings her back at the end. And if you didn't get the support conversation with her, then she just goes back to the World of Dragons. But if you do, then I think she stays. I didn't do it because I don't know. I had Eliwood and Ninian together so much, and they never ended up. Probably because I already got. Thinking back on it now, it's probably because I already got 5 support conversations with Eliwood, and that's why. It never happened. That's probably why.
Yeah. What did you think of Nurgle creating, like, morphs?
That's really interesting, especially, I think if you go back and play through the game in Hector mode and get some of those side chapters, like you get the Kashuna character, who's just a magic seal. I think he was the first one that actually had real emotions and sentience, but like his only purpose is that he's a magic seal, which kind of begs the question of like, because like in order to get that story you have to kill him, and then it's kind of like, oh, man, why did I have to kill him?
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
He actually helps you in the chapter he comes in, his magic seal, so that I left him alone. I wasn't inclined to attack the dude. I was like, I take that back. The first time I played through it, I did attack him because I just wanted to see what would happen.
Absolutely.
And what's funny is he doesn't even say anything. He's just like,
I usually leave him alone, but
because it works to your advantage.
That is true.
The other character has the boss character, I think, has bolting or something.
Yep.
For a far-reaching magic attack. And even though it makes your mages unable to function, you have plenty of physical units to deal damage to that boss, which is what you should be doing anyway, because he's a magic character, so he's going to be weaker to physical attacks. But the morphs are interesting. I think that
Sonya's my favorite.
Sonya, yeah.
Yeah. And the last chapter, Light, it's awesome because it's ridiculously hard.
Yes.
Every boss, pretty much every difficult boss that you faced in the game is revived and strengthened. All of their stats are raised.
Yeah, they're all brought back as morphs.
And you have to fight them, and they don't speak.
But they smile when you defeat them. I like that.
because they're happy. They want release. They want sweet death, which is horrible. It's a very dark game.
I love how Fire Emblem's like, hey, you want to fight the most difficult bosses in the game, plus a couple more you haven't even faced yet, all at once?
Yep.
And then fight Nurgle. And then fight a dragon.
Yep.
Because you can't have a Fire Emblem game that doesn't end with you slaying a dragon.
No, you can't. And honestly, I think it's a bit of a overused gimmick, but let's be honest, it wouldn't be Fire Emblem without it.
It wouldn't be Fire Emblem if you did end the game with slaying a dragon. There's just no other way around it.
So, but basically, the whole premise of the story is that you move as a group, and you figure out that Nurgle is using quintessence to, revive dragons so that he can rule over the world, and you have to stop him. That's basically it. But there's just a lot of good, meaningful connections amongst all the characters, and the combat is awesome. The story is, it can be, like I said, a little lackluster at some points, but if we're being honest, it's fun, It's a classic Fire Emblem game.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, the story is very basic, but I think what makes it work is all the characters have their own personal journeys, right? Lynn is trying to find her grandfather, and then she ends up meeting Hector and Eliwood, and Eliwood is trying to find his dad, and he actually dies halfway through the game. And so that personal journey turns into, okay, no, we got to stop Nurgle. That's what's going to happen. Not just for vengeance, but because the world is in danger. And then Hector, actually, I think his personal journey is just that he's following Eliwood. He doesn't really have...
He just wants to fight.
He just wants to fight. Maybe that's why Hector's tale isn't as strong for you, because he doesn't really actually have a personal journey. He's not doing anything. He's just following Eliwood. I think his story starts off with he heard that Eliwood was in danger and he ran to him. That's it.
Yep. It's like Hector acts like a badass, but really he truly loves and cares for Eliwood. That's his best friend.
Yeah, they're brothers, man. And
Absolutely.
You get that through their support conversations. I think that adds a lot of dimensions to the characters and it gives them, some much needed development. And also with Lynn, add Lynn into the mix, and you have these three characters who become unlikely friends and lifelong friends. You're led to believe. I love the ending scene actually, where you see Hector and Eliwood grown up, and then actually starts hinting at the plot of the Binding Blade.
Yep, that's what it was set up for.
Right, this game sets up that game, and so if you know what happens in that game, you know where this is all coming to. And some of the characters show up in this one, and like Marcus. Some of the characters even are the parents of the characters in the Binding Blade, which actually is really interesting because those specific characters cannot die.
No, they cannot.
They'll just be the permadeath system still works though. The character isn't available for the rest of the game. They're injured and they can't fight anymore. But because they're necessary for plot relevance, they actually can't die, which on the one hand kind of takes away a little bit of the gravity of the situation, but it's only a few of the characters, and two of them are your Lord characters who can't die anyway, because that would be game over. So
Fire Emblem 7.
Yeah, no, it's a fucking fun game, man.
It really is.
I love it. I guess we'll go ahead and get into our final thoughts here.
Okay. Well, my final thought is that it's a very, very well done introduction of Fire Emblem to, the US. I think that all in all, it's a phenomenally done game. For how long it is, it kind of keeps the player engaged in the story, and I like that. I respect it. And honestly, I really hope that they kind of go back to that original, that GBA style of Fire Emblem. I know I'm probably on a very short list of people that agree with me, but I like the way that game is. I like the design of it. I think it's one of my favorite Fire Emblems, that or the Sacred Stones. And I think it's a really good way to explain the story that takes place before the Sealed Sword. And I love it. I give it a 8.5 out of 10. I love all of the chapters. And there's a lot of story there's a lot of smaller elements that we didn't necessarily cover. But just go play the game for yourself. You can download an emulator and play it on a ROM. And it's a really good experience. You can learn about Jafar and Nino and her relationship to, Linus and Lloyd and the Black Fang. And it's a lot of stuff that you really need to just experience for yourself.
Yeah.
So, but I love it. I think it's a wonderful game. What about you, Ash?
I came into this game with very little knowledge of what it was about. In fact, I don't even think I knew it was a tactical RPG until I started playing it. And I was like, oh, this is a tactical RPG. Okay, cool. So I think this is very much a game that, you just kind of just get thrown into and start playing, and you'll pick it up and love it. Like, it gives you a tutorial to the mechanics of that genre of game, and it is a fantastic introduction into the series. Seriously, I would recommend this game over any other Fire Emblem game to start with. And I don't think that you're alone in the GBA Fire Emblem game supremacy. I think that's actually a kind of a popular opinion. It's not a hot take. A lot of people feel like the series had a charm that it hasn't quite regained since. And I actually understand where people are coming from. I like a lot of the more modern games. I do. But there is something that is truly special about the GBA Fire Emblem games, and that starts with Blazing Blade for me. And I think that, you play Blazing Blade, and then, hey, go and play Blinding Blade now, because even though it takes place before, it's a lot harder. And
oh my god, so much harder.
Yeah, actually, it takes place after, so never mind. You're playing the game. You're playing it in order that way, so it actually works better chronologically too. And then play the Sacred Stones, because even though it's not connected, it very much exists in the same space as the other two GBA Fire Emblem games. Improved. It improves on those mechanics. I started playing a little bit more of the Sacred Stones too, and then I'm enjoying the hell out of it. But yeah, no, dude, thank you so much for suggesting this game, because it actually made me fall in love with this series.
Absolutely, dude. I'm really glad that you were able to experience that, and you should play the Sacred Stones.
Yeah, no, I got to play through it. In fact, I think if we do a Let's Play, I think that's the one we should do.
All right, brother. I'll leave that to you.
Because I think that would be a lot of fun. I would love to do a Let's Play. There's so many Fire Emblem games that we could honestly do. We could do one a season, and probably never even get through like every single game, because there's so far 16 of them.
Okay, yeah,
and that's including remakes and whatnot. I mean, I don't suppose we'd go back and play the original, but if we do the remake, because with Fire Emblem, it's not like Final Fantasy VII. It's like the remake is just kind of a better version of the game. It's kind of like a zero mission thing. But speaking of Final Fantasy VII, that is what we are opening up next season with. That's going to be our season premiere. In part 1, we were talking about the original Final Fantasy VII. And in part 2, we were talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake. And we're going to convince you why you need to play both, because they are different games. And they both have their strengths and weaknesses. And they're just different games. So I actually am ecstatic about it, because Final Fantasy is another series that I'm now falling in love with, or at least the Final Fantasy VII sub-series, because, God, it is so good. Now, as far as Season 4 of Collateral Gaming goes, this is it, man. This is the season finale. We are so happy to have done this season with you guys, with you and Megan. I think that we've touched on a lot of really awesome games. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm still really excited and blessed to, be a part of this podcast experience. I've really, truly enjoyed it. And honestly, I am really excited for what the future seasons hold. I cannot wait to work with you guys.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, we definitely had a lot of bangers this time, and we opened up with Metroid Dread. We did Zelda Twilight Princess. That was our Zelda game. We did Superman 64, which was... Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. GoldenEye was our 420 special. I mean, man, we had just a lot of fucking cool games. Megan and I did Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and also Anthem, which was horrible.
Yeah, Anthem is a pretty terrible game. But to be honest, I'm glad that I'm still here with you guys. A lot of things have changed since I've started on the podcast. We've come a long way from just talking about the Metroid Prime trilogy when I was just a guest on that episode, and now here we are. Yeah. So, and it's funny because actually after Ash and I finish recording, we're actually going to watch some more Chuck. We've been watching Chuck, and it's just such a good show. I love it. So
we can love Chuck,
and we can continue popping off ideas for the future of the podcast while we watch.
Fuck yeah, dude!
But thanks for tuning in for season 4, everybody.
Yeah, guys, that's pretty much a wrap on that. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us feedback on your platform of choice. A 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, for instance, would be phenomenal. That helps us. And if you want to support the show, go check out our Patreon. we have exclusive Let's Play video game commentaries, and we will have more coming out. I kind of wanted to do a lot of that during the inter-season break, which never ended up happening. Although, in retrospect, while I was waiting to make this part 2 happen, I could have been working on that. Damn it.
I mean, I'm sure it's fine.
It's fine. We'll get caught up with that shit, man. And you can find Collateral Gaming wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google. And if there's any platform that we're not on, let us know. If you'd like to collaborate, if you are a fellow podcaster, a streamer, just a video game enthusiast, and you think, hey man, I want to lend my talent, hit us up in the DMs. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Check out our Facebook group, Collateral Media Podcasts, as well, because that's kind of where we that's our shit posting group. That's what that is.
Yep, it is.
And you could join in. And you could also report on news related to movies, video games, or even branch out. You want to talk about other pop culture shit? I mean, we were going to have a music podcast in the works, and I don't know if that's actually going to happen now, but...
Yeah, you never know, man. You never know.
Yeah, but anywho, thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for staying with us this whole season. So ecstatic about the number of downloads we get. I've noticed if I don't release an episode out for even like a month or so, we still get downloads every day, dude. So thank you so much for that, guys. Thank you for taking an interest in our show and listening to our shit and keeping up with it, because I mean, we wouldn't be able to continue going, and this podcast wouldn't be as successful as it has without that. And I would say that we're pretty successful, both Collateral Cinema and Collateral Gaming. I mean, we're stacking up. Collateral Cinema finally hit over 10,000 downloads this season. At Collateral Gaming, we are approaching 9,000.
Yes, we are, and that's really, really exciting.
And we're going to have a DBZ moment when that happens. It's over 9,000!
Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, let's get out of here.
All right, that being said, I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Guillo.
This has been Collateral Gaming Season 4.
Season 4.
And we are out.
Out. Bye.
Slavia, Ukraine, and all that shit.
Bye.
Collateral Gaming is a Collateral Media podcast. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.